Hello, and welcome to Aesop Grimm's Chronicles, where the emphasis is on immersion and storytelling. While some games contain mature themes or language, you can expect clean commentary from me as a narrator. Additionally, I will provide a content summary in the intro video for each chronicled series, so no one is blindsided or surprised. Let's play a story. Hello everybody, I am Aesop Grimm, and welcome to Chronicle 1 for EvE Online. Let's get straight to the content briefing here. I looked this up for the ESRB rating. ESRB gives it a rating of teen, but because it's an online game and they do not rate online interactions, they don't really have a summary. So I went to commonsensemedia.org, and a woman named Carolyn Coe gave it a rating of 4 out of 5 stars, says that it should be rated at age 14 plus, and describes it as fly starships and destroy enemies in online space games. Parents chimed in on this also. There are 9 reviews. Collectively, they averaged age 15 plus and 3 stars. And then there were 4 kids who weighed in as well, and collectively they average age 13 plus and 4 stars. So that's probably an average of, let's go ahead and say 3 3/4 stars, and between the ages of 13 and 15. Down in the What Parents Need to Know section, Carolyn writes, parents need to know that EvE Online is a massively multiplayer online role-playing game that requires a monthly subscription. The world and the economy is player-driven, and a major part of the game is player versus player, or PvP, where players actually fight each other. Smuggling or drug running is part of the game, as is exploration, trading, manufacturing, fighting the pirates, or being a pirate and hunting and stealing from other players. The game is rated T for violence, as players shoot and blow each other's ships up, but there is no blood or gore, as a player quote-unquote characters are spaceships and not humanoids. Okay, what Carolyn means is that graphically, you don't see a person, you see a ship. You play as a person, but you see a ship. You don't run around from a first-person perspective or anything. And all you're really going to see in EvE is ships blowing up in space. There's explosions and metal goes everywhere and stuff like that, but no gore, and you don't float around in space with bodies bouncing off your windshield or anything like that. You don't have that kind of thing. And I guess the area of concern would have to be with the online interaction. Now, different online games, they kind of cultivate different atmospheres, I suppose. And the way a game plays attracts a certain kind of person, and then that game gains like a reputation. I kind of have the impression that Fortnite is a little bit different from Call of Duty. Call of Duty, and to a much lesser degree, is a little bit different than Battlefield. You have different players that are attracted to these places, and then as a result, other kinds of players will leave. World of Warcraft, amazingly, is still playing. It's about as old as EvE is, and it's different than EvE, right? So the thing with EvE is that it is notoriously known to be extremely harsh and unforgiving in its player environment. You're going to get jacked with in EvE. You have to accept that as a reality. For whatever the reasons are, people will scam you. They will set up contracts and take advantage of the fact that you don't really know what you're doing. They'll cleverly word it and do things in a way in which they completely rob you of all ISK. They will hunt you down or wait for you to come through gates and kill you without mercy and with no provocation whatsoever. And then they will kill your pod, and they'll send you text messages and emails, or what's called EvE mails, and laugh you to scorn over it. These are the things that happen in EvE. Okay, and it has a reputation for that. So it's known to be kind of a harsh environment, and I'm not throwing any shade at that. It's what makes EvE EvE. You get into this game to kind of experience a cold, hard reality. There are good people in EvE, and there are people who are with intent, absolutely merciless and malicious in their dealings with you. And they find that to be funny. I mean, I don't know what the reasons are. Maybe they had a bad day at work and they can't punch any of those people, so you become the proverbial punching bag, so they come home, log on, find somebody that they can grief, and they feel better about their life. Whatever the reasons are, these people exist and are prominently featured in a game like EvE, as far as its moderating what people do, I would describe EvE as being exceptionally libertarian. They don't really interfere with anything. If you want to do it, you could do it. That's on you. You get to choose whether you're good or whether you're bad. You get to choose how you respond to things happening to you, and all of that is kind of baked into the cake with EvE Online. So I think that does it for the content summary. I feel like I've provided plenty of information for you guys to make your own decision on, and we will press on. When it comes to what EvE is about, I'm going to try and give a short synopsis, but you got to understand there's a lot of really good and deep lore available on EvE. So if you want to know more about the backstory, get online, look it up. It's pretty neat stuff. But basically, humanity began to explore the stars and found a wormhole leading to another galaxy that we called New Eden, I believe. Take all of this with a grain of salt. I've been playing this game since 2007, but it's been off and on, and a whole lot more off than on. And I also have never been part of a corporation. I solo. I am the meme that people talk about, that guy that joins a multiplayer online community to be by himself. it's just that way, and so there's a lot of things I don't know about EvE. Whatever I know about EvE, I've kind of learned from doing my own research, so it's a slow process, and that includes the lore, because there's a lot of lore. But we jumped through this wormhole, we populated worlds in this area, and then the wormhole collapsed, and over a long period of time, humanity and the New Eden area kind of devolved into 4 factions, and those 4 factions can be split into 2 pairs, really, that directly affected each other. The first pair are the Amar and the Minmatar. The Amar are probably the best analogy we can come up with, is they're like the old British Empire, or maybe like feudal Europe might be a better, more apt description. They are a class system with nobility, and it's very much class distinction. And they used to enslave the Minmatars until the Minmatars revolted, and successfully revolted, and broke away and formed a republic. To me, and this might be a unique perspective, because there's another group in here, the Galente, that most people are going to think like America, I think, when they think of Galente. But to me, the Minmatar Republic reflects it the best. I see 1776 America with the Minmatar Republic. Okay, so I'm just trying to give things that we should be fairly familiar with in order to give you a eagle eye understanding of what this world is like. So the Minmatar broke away from the Amar. They are poor. They do not have resources, but they have successfully formed their own civilization, and it is the Minmatar Republic. They use their ingenuity and their industriousness to piece together what pieces they do have and get effective ships and space stations and stuff. But they're very much jerry-rigging everything. That's the Minmatar as a whole. And the Amar are very highbrow, old society with old rules. Then you have the Galente. The Galente are very liberal. They're very egalitarian. They believe intensely in individual liberty. Most people, I think, are going to feel like, okay, that's America. The and they're also they're labeled as the only true democracy. Okay, well, that's probably where I split hairs. America is a republic, and that's why I think that it's more like the Minmatar. And there are some things that have been said about pure democracies that I think that this is more like revolutionary France. If you read up on the French Revolution, whenever the institutions were being overthrown, and the old phrase was hang the last king with the guts of the last priest, right? It was about the common man and divorcing oneself from the previously held faith and the institutions of the land, like the monarchy and the church and stuff like that. So that's why I think that they align better with revolutionary France. The other group that the Galentes sort of, when they expanded, and they expanded hard one time, they just had a technological leap forward, and they sort of took over this other group of people, sort of almost by default, called the Caldari. They were just so much more ahead of the Caldari. There was nothing the Caldari could do about it. And I don't think, if I understand it right, I don't think the Galente did this maliciously. I think the Galente sort of had an assumption that everybody would want to do things their way. They've got the best system, the best society, and why would you not like to be like us? Let us educate you out of your imbecility and your savagery. And the Caldari grew to resent this. The Caldari are sort of the opposite in a lot of ways from the Galente. They are authoritarian. They began with monarchies, and they are utilitarian in their society. If you read about the Caldari, even in the opening segment of the game, if you read about the Caldari, it tells you very explicitly everything is really pointing towards what is your role, what can you do for the state. That is like what defines your value as a human being. What can you do for the state? And if you don't have that ambition in you, something's wrong. And you need to be educated out of that. That's how the Caldari think, right? So they're very much an authoritarian regime. They're very corporation based. Their corporations have become their institutions, and it's a highly nationalistic zeal to move the ball forward, but in an exceptionally disciplined manner. Exceptionally disciplined. Everybody has their role, and you are expected and will fulfill this role because that's your job. That's what you were born for. That's your part to our people as a whole. We all move forward because of every individual's effort, and if you're not pulling your weight, you're hurting everybody. So get on the stick. That's the Caldari. Okay. And I'm going to play as Caldari because I haven't played as them for a really long time. I've a really long time, not since I first started this game. Most of the time I pick Galente. And so that's what we're going to begin as a Caldari player. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you? We came across, there's this old people called the Jove, and they died out a long time ago. Although they're still around, but they were killed almost to extinction by there was like a biological disease that wiped their civilization out, and this was eons ago. So we find relics of them. We find ruins the same way that we come across Greek and Roman ruins today on Earth, real time, in the real world. We find ruins of Jovian technology. But the thing is that they were way, way, way ahead of us. Even though they stopped really existing as a people, as a society, eons ago. And so one of the things we learned about with them is something called a pod, and a pod interfaced the Jovian body with the ship. It created a direct link from the Jovian mind, a neurological link from the Jovian mind to the ship's systems, so that the Jove only had to think about what he wanted the ship to do, and then the ship could process that and accomplish the task. That made everything really, really a lot faster than the traditional way of doing things. And we learned how to do that and incorporate that technology, and that's what led to what's called capsuleer pilots. Our guy is a capsuleer pilot. That's what you play as in EvE. And the best analogy I can come up with for capsuleer pilots is that they're kind of like professional athletes. They're sort of, you have to be genetically blessed to be able to handle the rigors of being in a pod and being neurologically interfaced with a ship. It's like you're the top 1%, when it comes to genetics. If you've ever seen the movie Gattaca, that's really kind of what I think about with it's the upper amount, the upper echelon of people that are fit to do this job. So not everybody can be a capsuleer pilot, and in fact, most people can't. But kind of also like professional athletes, capsuleer pilots, because of the power they wield, they're highly sought after. They're paid very well, but they're also sort of cutthroats and free agents and sort of out for themselves. They're extremely cocky, or they can be, and so they have a certain reputation surrounding them that, in its own way, is kind of elitist. Kind of like, I can do all this stuff and you can't. Sort of that kind of sort of approach on things. Not saying that every professional athlete is like that, but you can get these sorts of attitudes, especially when you get to the pinnacle of something. And I think this even extends outside of sports. If you get to the pinnacle of something, there's pretty good chances that you have some cockiness in your personality, because you're going to have to weather a lot of storms to get there. And at the end of the day, have to really believe, no, I can do this. And that a lot of times shares that comes from being cocky, And so anyway, that's what some of these pilots have. So you can read more about that online. I think that'll wrap that up. There's a lot that you can read online. Moving on to our actual character. What did I name him? Our character's name is Lincoln Grimm, and in my mind's eye, I don't have a backstory worked up for him, but I have an idea of one. It's just that it's kind of vague. So the idea is that he grew up in a border system with Gallente. In fact, I think Caldari Prime has both Gallente and Caldari living on it. So he grew up on a planet kind of like that, or at least in a system where he was in close proximity with Gallentian culture. So he knows Gallente, the Gallente. He knows it pretty well. He grew up and matured in an environment where both of these societies intertwined with each other. And then he joined the Caldari Navy. And in my mind, he was not a pilot. He joined as a foot soldier. He was a Marine. So there's a game out there called Dust 517 or something like that that sort of parallels with EvE a little bit. That's kind of how I see him. He is a veteran. He's been through war before, and he fought for the Caldari. We'll say he was in the Caldari Space Marines, right? When he got out of something happened while he was in the Navy. Oh, before I say that, I need to say what he is. The faction, each one of these factions have 3 bloodlines in them. And our guy is what's called Decius, which is the faction that breeds the most loyal people to the state. This is where the officers come from. They tend to be excellent communicators. They can articulate their points very well. They're raised and trained to be the leaders of the Caldari state. So you can imagine what kind of propaganda they go through. On top of that, he's literally a test tube baby. That's something that you can elect. The Gallente have a kind of a neat one too called Reborn. And it's like some dark magic stuff. It's actually really dark. I might do a future episode on that. It's pretty dark, but this with the Caldari, you can select your guy to be a test tube. So our dude was born as a test tube baby. He was literally created and then raised for the purpose of being the most diehard, loyal, unquestioning, unflinching. I wouldn't say merciless, but most convicted about pushing the Caldari state forward. But we're going to say that through his experiences on the battlefield, and the fact that he grew up with Galantian culture, he just kind of got disillusioned. He doesn't hate his country, or his society at all. He's pro Caldari. It's just that he doesn't buy into the whole line that the Galantians are nothing but thieving sons of guns, that need to be wiped off the table of existence, or that the universe would be better without them, or that they cannot be trusted. Everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie. He doesn't buy into that. And then, so he knew that from growing up, right? He may not have been best friends with Galantians, but he's seen that they are not this vile portrayal that the Caldari state paints them to be. And then on top of that, he saw some things happen during war where he saw maybe he saw benefits being passed to people that it shouldn't have been passed to, favoritism, something like that. Something got him to sort of doubt and become disillusioned with the pro-Caldari side of the propaganda. So that's both sides. That's the anti-Galantian propaganda and the pro-Caldari propaganda. And he's sort of like, okay, I think there's some hyperbole here, and you guys are painting a picture that's really not all that accurate. This is just the narrative that you want me to believe. And so he sort of struck out on his own, and he got out of the Navy. And then I haven't decided how or thought of how, but in some way, shape, or form, he found out he was genetically gifted in the ways that you need to be a capsuleer pilot. And so he became a capsuleer pilot. He's a new capsuleer pilot, kind of fresh out of the Caldari Navy. And he is now looking at the world with a different set of eyes, where he doesn't trust anybody. He doesn't think the Galantians are good people. He doesn't think they're the good guys, like as a body politic. He judges people on an individual basis, and he doesn't really care where you're from, what faction you're associated with. At the same time, he's not, at least at this point in time, he's not somebody who's been pushed to the edges or the periphery of society where he feels like his path to greatness would be through the black market, or dealing with taboo things. He doesn't support any of that. He's an overall good dude. He's got morals. He's got a good idea of character and ethics and stuff like that. He just simply doesn't buy into the whole Caldari state is prime and everybody else is less. He doesn't buy into that, nor does he buy into anybody else being all that great. And he's going to judge individuals off of merit rather than what faction they're associated with or what their job is. What they do, how they behave, what their life choices are, that he will make judgments on. So anyway, I think that wraps it up for the idea of what we're doing as far as the character. The last thing I'll tell you is what the plan is for this chronicle, and the plan is that there's not a plan. There is a sketch, though. There's an outline. And the outline goes something like this. I'm going to do the tutorial mission, and I'm going to do the career agents up to the military career agent, and all of that's going to be done offline. I don't see any need to record it and have you guys sit through that stuff. Where we will pick up is at the military career agent, because that's when we start getting new stuff that kind of affects our stats, and we get new ships and things like that. And so we will pick up at the military career agent. When we're done with that and the advanced military career agent, we will move on to the Sisters of EvE epic arc. We will accomplish that. This is a PvE playthrough. PvE. I am what EVE Online calls a Care Bear. And so, at least for this chronicle, we're going to be doing PvE, and it's going to be probably exclusively high sec. I'm not making promises, though. I might go into low sec. I don't know. But we'll find out. So, we'll do the Sisters of EvE epic arc. Then we're going to move on to missions. We're probably going to do missions for the Sisters of EvE up to about level 2, at which point in time we'll start hitting what's called combat anomalies. And after combat anomalies, I want to get into what seems to be the PvE end game, and that's Abyssal Dead Space. or maybe it's called Abyssal Space, and that's supposed to be the most graphically beautiful part of EVE right now. It's also the latest edition, and I have seen some updates from EVE Online about future patches, and it looks like CCP is planned. That's who makes EVE Online, CCP, and it looks like CCP is planning on expanding on the Triglavian invasion and Abyssal aspects of this game. Those two are related. The Triglavians come from Abyssal Space, and so that looks like the place that we should be aiming for. So I'd like to get into that, and by the time we're done with combat anomalies and level 2 missions, I feel like we will have enough skills to fly a good enough ship to go into Abyssal Space, and we'll be making enough ISK that we can afford to replace that ship if it gets blown up. And so that is the plan. Side note, and kind of sitting on the back burner, I will try and plex this account as well. Very briefly, go over plexing. This game is split up into paid subscription and free to play. The paid subscription is $14.95 a month, US dollars, and it gives you what's called an Omega clone status. An Omega clone has access to 100% of the game, can train faster, can load up as many skills as they want to be trained on. So if you were going to go on a 6-month business trip, you can load up as many skills as you want, and by the time you get back, your character has trained all those skills. That's a scenario. That's an example of what an Omega account can do. They can train every single skill in the game, and they can train it all the way to the maximum level 5. An alpha clone is free to play. You can have as many accounts as you want, and each account can hold up to 3 people, and it is free to play. The drawbacks are that you train slower than an Omega class. Your skill queue is limited to a 24-hour period, and you can do that up to the 5 million skill point, where you can choose the skills that you want to level up in, and for 5 million skill points, you can train in that method as long as it doesn't exceed 24 hours. And then once you're under 24 hours, you can load more skills. Once you hit the 5 million skill point cap, you have to wait for what's called skill injectors, which EVE Online does make possible for you to earn through in-game activities. You can also buy them, but I won't be doing that. And then with skill injectors, you can go up to 20 million skill points. But it takes a while to get that many skill point injectors. So also, you do not have access to all skills. There's a few that you can't access. And the ones that you do have access to, some of them you can level all the way to 5. A few you can only level to level 2. A few more you can level to level 3. And a lot of them you can only level to level 4. Those are the restrictions placed on an alpha account, but it is free to play, and you get access to, I'd say, 85 to 90% of the game. So it's very playable. But what happens is that there's an end-game item you can buy on the EVE market called PLEX. PLEX are very expensive. But if you can buy 500 of them, you can turn those PLEX into CCP, and they will give you 1 month free of Omega status clone. Omega clone status. And so what a lot of people end up doing is they learn how to play the game well enough, and they get skilled up high enough that they do activities. And apparently there's a whole string of different ways that you can do this, but they do activities to a level that a couple days a month of really, focused effort, they can grind out enough ISK to go buy 500 Plex, and then they can Omega clone. They can get Omega clone status for their account for the whole month, and they do this month in and month out. So they don't pay real world money. They pay end game ISK. The reason I say that's on the back burner for me is that I'm really not confident that I can do that. But if I can, I would love to do it. If for nothing else than to be able to say that I did it. It's like an achievement. I think it's really neat. It's a very neat concept. So we'll see what happens with that. That will wrap things up here. In the next episode, I'm going to show you guys some third-party tools. One is called PyFA, the other is called EvMon. I'm going to teach you guys how to put together a skill plan so that you don't waste those 5 million skill points that you get, and you are moving. You have a vision for what you want to move towards and how to set up a skill plan to get you there in the most efficient manner possible. And those two apps will allow you to do that. I'll show you where to download them from. I will actually build a skill plan and show you that online or on the video. And then after that, after that episode, we will get started with the military career agents. So again, I am Aesop Grimm. Thank you for coming by the channel and checking things out. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode where the story continues. Thanks for visiting Aesop Grimm's Chronicles. If you've made it this far in the video, please consider rating, commenting, subscribing, and sharing. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, stay shiny.